everybody, it's your host Grimo with Curly Bardock and a special guest, Aaron Bennett. So, for those of you guys who don't know who Aaron Bennett is, he is creating his own comic book line called Fractured Echo. He is the main author. He also works in with other artistic jobs, and he's trying to create a story for people like us who like certain styles, punk, very beautiful colors, a lot of neon purples and blues, and for people like us to have a new way of envisioning comic books. This is some punk sci-fi new ideology that you've never seen before, and I can't wait till you meet him with us. Welcome to Showtime Nerds. All right. So, Aaron, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic. It's very late over here in Australia, but I'm amazing.
All right. Well,
It's kind of interesting. The start of this was really my effort to reconnect with a friend that I hadn't seen in a long time. He moved away. It's pretty far, like another state, and you have conversations with people. But I've always found that when you have a project, you can kind of keep the channel of conversation open longer. So basically, I was trying to think of something kind of nerdy, kind of geeky that we both create together. And I was thinking of comic books because that's all this friend of mine ever talks about. And one day I was just like, why don't we just start writing something, and like we don't have to draw it, we could just write it. And he was like, sure, maybe. I don't have to do too much, do I? And people get lazy, right? So basically, I started writing it. He had no hand in it at the start. I showed him. We sort of talked about it a little bit, and as it happens, these things die and people sort of move on and don't want to talk about it. A few months later, I picked it up. I'm like, screw it, I'm doing it on my own. I'm gonna make this thing happen. I reached out to a few comic book artists, and Rod picked up and he said, this looks amazing. I love what you're doing. It's sci-fi. I haven't done sci-fi before. And that's kind of how it happened.
that sounds holy shit, that sounds beautiful. So since it was a way to reconnect with a friend, do you think part of the story also adds to that? Is there something that the main character wants to reconnect in their presence of the comic book?
In the presence of the comic book. What do you mean by that?
So throughout the story, do we see a similar story of like the main character having a feeling of needing to reconnect, or is it something that just was inspiration for the comic book but nothing for the storyline of it?
Oh, I get you. Is it sort of mirrored in the story? No, I'd say it's very much just inspired by a lot of sci-fi movies that we both watched. Mainly video games, I'd say. Like Bioshock is kind of, it's not sci-fi, but it's a little bit kind of weird. It's got kind of that weird sci-fi edge to it, I'd say. And Dead Space, the third Dead Space game, that was something we both played together in co-op mode. And I don't know, we kind of just wanted to relive that feeling of when we kind of didn't have jobs.
Before responsibilities hit.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was kind of that. And then, I suggested a whole bunch of stuff, kind of took it from there. Any project that lasts longer than a couple of weeks, it's like, wow.
We finally got somewhere.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I don't know how I got to this place where it's got pages and it's got artwork, but
hey, it's the journey. It's the journey, and I can't wait to see more of that journey. Especially, I have questions. How did you how did you interact with Rod, and how did you like present him your work? Did you just randomly shoot him a text and in hopes that he would answer, or was there a little bit of like more connecting in there?
Yeah, I suppose it was a little bit more connecting than I kind of expressed, but it was more like through friends, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Another friend of mine was doing a comic book just for fun, and then he had a list that he already compiled of kind of artists and different styles that he was looking at, and I'm not one for researching things. It's not a strength of mine. And I had a look and I found Rod Looper and I was like, fuck it, let's do that. And it kind of worked out. He replied to my message, and I think I was just lucky in that sense that it wasn't a huge thing
Yeah.
that I had to research.
Yeah. Oh no, I see a lot of Curly Bardock in you. This man just he reached out to me. He's like, "Yo, podcast." I'm like, "I'm down."
Exactly. I mean, it's all, I guess, desire. If you have a desire for something and you're enjoying it, just keep it going. Um, sometimes it's very difficult. I'm sure you guys have the same issues trying to get content out there, trying to promote things, trying to make the actual product. But if you love it at the end of the day, just keep going.
It'll reach people. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's get some questions going, real rapid fire in there. First things first, with the main character, what inspired you for that main character? Can you give us like a little background and what you hope, without spoilers, obviously, what you hope for this character to reach? And can we get a little more information on some of the creatures they'll face? I saw an image of this big dark creature that almost looked like a chupacabra, and it was like very, I wouldn't say disgusting, but more like a eerie feel to him. And I just want to know a little more about them. So
Right. Well, the first question, why Alex? Why did I choose a girl? Maybe. To answer that, it's because of my wife. I kind of just from instinct decided to make it a girl, and to make it kind of like, the Alien franchise. Yeah, I kind of looked at that, and I love how it presents women as these really strong, powerful figures, which they are, and definitely can be. I love that kind of storytelling because there's an element to having a female protagonist that makes you slightly worried while you're watching them that something bad's going to happen. Like protective instinct. As a man, you do look at them and think, I'm a little worried, especially in a movie. You see them walking through a corridor and you don't know if they're going to be able to handle themselves. But I love that part of the story. It's kind of interesting, which is why I decided to go with Alex. And a lot of her traits and characteristics, which you guys won't see yet, but a lot of them are based off of my wife. She's very fiery, very strong-willed. She's got a lot of those character traits that I really appreciate. As for the monster, that was a long process, dude. that was a hell of a thing to go through. A lot of back and forth with Rod Looper in terms of the artwork and how it's going to look. I mean, it's one of those things where the villain is kind of just as important as the main character. If you know what I mean, like it's
yeah, of course.
Nail that part. It's people lose interest. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Especially with, like, for example, Avatar: The Last Airbender. The whole thing is we get to see the journey of both Aang and Zuko, and Zuko's the antagonist. So it's awesome to see the process and progress through both characters as opposed to just one. We want to not like the villain as well as love the main character.
Exactly. You want to see maybe the humanity, or even like how it all came about, why they the way they are. All those things are really interesting to me. With this villain, it's a little bit different because it's not so much a person, although it is. I don't want to give too much away. I'm trying to think of a way of explaining it that doesn't ruin it. It's more of a collection of people. Let's say that. It's a collection of people that are all trying to do something good, they think is good. And, the best of intentions sometimes turn out to be terrible mistakes. and lead to really bad outcomes. So that's kind of where this monster comes from. If that answers any of your questions.
Yeah, no, yeah, I like it. It's he's more like a Thanos, Doctor Doom type of character. He's trying to do what's right for that, what they think is right for everybody, but turns out not to be right at all.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Just slightly confused person trying to do the best thing possible, and it kind of blows up in their face a little bit.
yeah,
Which I really like that kind of storytelling where
yeah.
it's
I can't wait to see it. I'm excited.
right. Like there's no kind of purely evil people like being evil for no reason. It's really just bad circumstances, and then the protagonist has to try and kind of solve it in a way, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Um. Well, I mean, as a psych major, I know some people, not always. These are like very slight cases. Some people are naturally born evil, but I do like that for most cases, for like very 80 to 90% of the time, it's just someone doing something that they thought was good their entire life, or maybe they gone through so many traumas that to them what they're doing is a way of relief. And usually people never notice that. They're like, oh, he's being an asshole, he's gaslighting, manipulating, he's a terrible person. But when you really start to learn more about them, you're like, oh, in reality they're just projecting what they've been through. They're not even trying to harm people.
Exactly. It's never like ill intention. It's just a series of choices that at every point was meant for something good, and they kind of just overlook the bit that's kind of bad, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
This particular story, it was more exploring the way people can be deceived by their own beliefs. um, a a need for purpose in your life can sometimes lead you astray to ideas that are sometimes not good for you, and it's a lot of that. It's these things that everyone struggles with, I think, and that's kind of what the villain is doing in this story, looking for purpose and making a lot of mistakes. Basically, it's a very human story. It's some basically a story about the search for purpose in someone's life, and how that can go terribly wrong. You know.
No, I'm loving the story so far. I can't wait till I read it and see it, 'cause it looks so visually appealing. Like I look, purple's already one of my favorite colors. And so seeing that there's a lot of neon purple lighting, it attracts my eyes. Like, I feel like a fly. I'm just looking through the pages and stuff from your post, and I'm just whoa. Because it looks so beautiful. So I have a question. When it came to coloring and the effects and lightings, how did that come to be?
From the very beginning, I kind of had this thought. It was maybe a subconscious thought, not something I had ever kind of wrote down or kind of figured out properly. It did take time, but I was kind of looking at Blade Runner, and
Yes. Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about.
right, like that color scheme that they promote in the posters and everything. The neons just
Yeah.
like
It looks beautiful.
really, really beautiful. And they do it in such a way that it makes you want to keep staring at it. Like it doesn't matter how boring the scene is, you just want to keep looking because of all the visuals are so pretty. And I kind of wanted that to be mirrored in the pages of the comic book. I wanted that same look and feel. Just every page is an artwork in itself. It's not just, I mean, everybody does comic books, right? There's a lot of them out there. And I'm not dissing anyone's comic books, but a lot of people do black and white, or they do, the classic sort of, if it's sci-fi, a lot of silvers, a lot of metal shading. In this one, I wanted pages that really kind of pull you in. It's like every time you turn the page, it's really intense. Um, I think you might even see that in a lot of the work I've done, which is on my Instagram. It's a lot of neon. I don't know why, but I love that kind of the colors. It's it's got to pop.
Yeah,
Otherwise, I lose interest, basically. But that was a process as well because I totally forgot about it. It's actually there was a stage where it was going to be black and white. I was yeah, completely. Like I fell in love with the inking. Have you guys seen like comic book artists do like the inkings?
yeah, yeah.
It's incredible.
It's satisfying.
Yeah, like I looked at that and I kind of confused myself about what I wanted. You know, you just going through the whole process of researching and then you're like, oh, that looks cool. Oh, but that looks better. Then it's a few weeks later and you like spend all this money on stuff, make a mistake.
Yeah.
Which in this case, I don't think I made a mistake. I think it was worth checking that out. But in the end, I turned to Rod and I said, dude, we have to do color. like, like I'm gonna be disappointed. I kept telling myself that I'm gonna be disappointed if I don't do this. It's actually interesting because I hadn't actually spoken to Rod in person until recently when we did another podcast, and I learned that he actually didn't believe it would work. Rod didn't think the colors would work at all. He was
Really?
yeah, and when you're doing something for commission, I've been in that position as well where the client says one thing and you're like, what are you talking about? That's not going to work. You get frustrated. He had that moment with me, and he's sort of forced himself to keep going. And what was amazing to watch when he explained it was he kind of lost himself in the flow of it, and then he ended up on what you see now, which is what I envisioned, but he just couldn't see it, and it's kind of cool to experience that through another artist
Yeah.
that's had that same struggle, even though I was the one pushing him. Very cool.
I like it. I watch stuff and usually I'm very focused on the story. I'm the story guy of our channel. I listen and look at the story. It's just how my brain works. But when I saw your comic book, for a second, my brain just instantly thought, I like it. I like what I'm seeing. I like how it feels to my eyes. I want to know more. I just needed to know more and had to come in contact with you.
Thanks, dude. Yeah, you actually like one of the first ones to follow along and help us out with the growth of the page, which as you know, it's pretty tough these
Yeah,
days trying to get people to even care about what you're doing. But yeah, I appreciate that. It's
yeah.
it's been a long journey, honestly. Like I think I started this like 7 months ago or something, and there's many points along the journey where I actually thought it's not going to happen. We're just not going to do this. It's getting too expensive. At one point, I was unemployed, so that wasn't good. Money wasn't coming in.
Yeah.
But you guys know how it is. You got to keep pushing, keep trying to find ways to make it happen.
Yeah. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad that you're continuing because I personally I want to see how it ends. I want to see how it continues. I'm one of those people that I don't know why, but I have the sense of things I like, and once I like them, I hold them. Which is not always, but when it does, I get super invested and interesting. I'm a very passionate person. So to me, your comics is something I feel other people should try to read, should try to take a moment just to appreciate. I really want to promote it, make people see it because I am hoping you do awesomely. I am hoping people love your work and they continue to want it because it feels so awesome. It's something that's new, different, and I hope it's something people get to love as soon as they see it like I did. And honestly, we do comic dubbing too. So if you ever want us to dub any of your comics and you want to select the cast or anything, let us know. We'll make sure that we set everything up to how you like it and make it feel almost like it could be on a show. And we'll do that for you.
It's funny you mentioned that actually, because one of the first ideas I had when I was creating this whole project is I want to make this into a Netflix series. You know, I wanted to have actors come in and do the parts. And I thought, how do you do that when you have nothing, right? No money, no budget. And I thought, well, you could always do like a QR code system where you scan the comic book and then it loads like the voice actor, like to read through the comic book. And, you know, obviously you have to cut back on your goals early on just to make certain things happen. But that was definitely something I thought about initially, like just the idea of having someone read the lines and do the voice. It's yeah, super
Well,
interesting.
we could make that happen for you. What's it called? I am a nonprofit voice actor, so I try to go online and find any job that anybody needs, especially since I have a deep voice, and I'm trying to get myself out there. I know more people that are also nonprofit voice actors or paid voice actors. My girlfriend is also trying to learn voice acting with me. So if you need people to voice it, we got it. We already have done, I think, two comic dubbing, but one of them is released. The other one is still working on. We're doing more. So definitely we'll try to download the pages online, do editing so that you could sort of see it go frame by frame and make you feel like it's almost like constant show, and we'll love it. We'll make sure we do it your way to make sure that what you're seeing is what you want.
Like a movie
Yeah,
almost.
exactly.
Yeah, that would be awesome. We should talk
Yeah.
about that for
Yeah, of
sure.
course. I'll Any resources you need, we'll upload it on YouTube, and you never know, someone might find it and try to give you that Netflix deal that you deserve.
Hey man, you've got to show the possibility somehow, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Definitely. Tell you the truth, I wanted to work in the video game industry, and I'm not a coder. I can't do modeling, as in 3D modeling. Um, and this was kind of my way in. Uh, You know, if you break it down into steps, how like what's the lowest level into the video game industry? And my thought was, well, a story and some visuals. So basically, you know, with my friend, we're thinking if we make this, we could turn it into a Netflix series, a video game. You know, it could do a whole bunch of different things that were much bigger than a comic book, basically. But you know, it's all about chunking, right? You got to bite-sized pieces, basically. You can't do everything all at once, and if you try, you're most likely gonna fall on your face. So yeah, it was very much like, okay, yes, we want to do all these major things that are really cool and possibly more fun than what we're doing right now, but step by step, let's write it first.
Yeah.
Yeah, get something on the page and then get some visuals going. Um, but yeah, man, it's basically been a journey of trying to get back to what I had when I was younger, which was watching movies and playing video games all day. Like I said, it's all been that from day one. It's like, how do I just live in that world professionally? Basically, I think anybody, you know.
No, I think it's awesome. Problem is, with a lot of what I'm seeing, the you must once it does go into Netflix, of course, I am hoping it does, or somewhere. The thing is, it's gonna be a lot of money considering the whole technology, the colorings, and all that. Because you went crazy. The comic book had, whoa, sorry, the comic book itself has so much in it that just one panel of it contains so much in it. It's beautiful. You could see certain aspects of the characters, like the suit. You could see so much detail in it. You could see so much detail in the background. I also have a question. How do you work on the back? Do you have like a bigger version of the background you work on the details for, and then you shrink it for the panels, or how do you work so much on detailing?
I honestly wish Rod was here because he's the one who
Hmm.
does all that work.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, in terms of getting the pages back and doing that kind of step by step, getting sketches done, you know, refining it to the point where it's a finished page, all that stuff, it's very much like him sending me this kind of blotchy, kind of rough sketch that doesn't look like much. and then I'll Photoshop in bits I want, and then he'll come back and do it all perfect. And it's back and forth like that, basically. But yeah, for the detail, he would do a lot of editing. Even just like that dotted effect that comic books have.
Yeah.
A lot of that I noticed was layered in, and the only reason I know that, by the way, is because he would share the working files with me
Yeah.
because I've got a design background, so I could open it up. I think at some stage he was getting a little bit pissed off with me. So he would send me the files. He's like, okay, you do it. I was getting too picky, but I did notice it was very much like him working in really small details, and then yeah, like you said, kind of expanding it and then fixing up any rough bits. But that big page, the double page that you see with the ship, that one took forever. Like, you know, that was a mission for him. I could tell it was. I think it was about 2 weeks, like on and off, obviously. But he's a busy dude and he's got a lot on. And to watch him go through that, it was like I'm not going to do a double page ever again. There was so much time where we could have done other stuff.
Yeah.
I'm really glad we did it, but I don't want to do it again. That's all I'm saying.
So, can we ask a few questions of the stories without spoilers, without like getting too much? I want to know what your main direction is, like sort of a overview of, without spoiling anything, of what's happening and what some people may expect to happen.
Right. Maybe I'll give you a breakdown of the story. I've kind of got this scripted enough so that I don't reveal anything by
All right.
accident. Basically, it tells the story of a small salvage crew as they explore the wreckage of a derelict vessel. What was meant to be an easy payday quickly becomes something much more terrifying. Shortly after entering the ship, signs of a cult following start to emerge, as well as disfigured creatures. These begin to stalk the crew, and before long, it's a fight for survival, basically. It does play on the classic sci-fi story.
Yeah.
As you all know, I just described something that's kind of maybe been done before.
Yeah.
What I want to express, but don't want to, ruin the story, it does have an Alice in Wonderland left turn in it, where it goes from the structure being classic to what the hell is this?
Yeah.
Which is where the culty vibes start to show themselves. The monsters get a little bit absurd. It's kind of like Bioshock in that way.
I'm excited. I like it. I like where it's going. It gives you that classic, so you have something familiar and then it throws you off balance.
Exactly. It definitely sets you up to expect something maybe a little bit mundane in the world of sci-fi, and then completely turns it on its head, and it's going to take you for a ride, definitely. I'm excited.
Me too.
It's a little bit embarrassing, actually. As a kid, I was into Disney. Like, a lot of the stuff I was into was Disney, uh, possibly because my family was very Christian. And anytime I expressed interest in like Buffy, Buffy the Vampire Slayer,
Yeah.
I always thought that was a really cool idea for a show. When I saw the ads for it, and I was like, man, that's so cool. I just loved all that gory stuff. It's kind of interesting, but obviously when you're in that kind of household that doesn't like stuff that's, maybe evil in their eyes, you just kind of lean on stuff that they're accepting of, like Disney stories. But in saying that, I think Disney and like Pixar and that kind of thing, they tell stories really well. And I think that's kind of where I've always leaned on is, if I'm gonna watch something or enjoy even a video game, it's always got to have a good story. It can't be, something that's, it's been done before. it's got to have something different about it, but it's the storytelling aspect. It's really important to me. And I did notice that from a young age. There's a lot of movies I watch again now as an adult. Even Toy Story, like that's an incredible storytelling feat, for all those different movies that they've joined together. Even the first one, you can rewatch that and it's still watchable. It's not like painful experience.
Yeah.
The Lion King, Genie, or Aladdin, rather.
Aladdin, yeah.
Yeah, I always think of it as Genie because he's the standout character.
Yeah. Hey, Genie's my favorite character too, so I understand.
Right. But yeah, definitely as I got older, going into, high school, you start to play some more video games that are a little bit more, they got a heavy rating on them. Blood and gore. Dead Space was huge. I very much get addicted to things. So I wouldn't switch from one game to the next. I'd kind of get stuck on one game and just keep playing it over and over again. I don't know if you guys can relate to that at all, but I mean, this is another kind of, I guess, more Disney style game, but Jak and Daxter for me was like early on. I don't know if you guys have you played
No,
that
yeah,
game?
I've played it, but I was more of a bigger fan on Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was like close to the same time period, but I don't know, something about Crush, like he felt funny to me because he's always spinning. So when I was younger, I was like, oh, he spins, look at him. So he was like my type of early PlayStation character. But
I
I played Jak and Daxter too.
I mean, it's all kind of in the same
Yeah,
realm of, games, right? It's like an adventure.
yeah,
There's a little bit of a story in both. Um, but that's kind of what I leaned on as a kid. Um, I can't say I played too much horror aside from Dead Space. I played Evil Within, which is more recent.
yeah.
Um, but Bioshock, Dead Space were early days. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no, I got lucky. My uncle, he sort of did it. So my mother had me young, and so a lot of the people around me were either also young or very old. So I got to experience a lot that other kids didn't. I played Crash Bandicoot. I played the old GTA's. I played the story. I played so many games not a lot of people got to experience, and I got to experience them young, almost like if they were part of my childhood. And it was just great. I I do love going back to some games and replaying them and seeing how they are and just having that moment like, oh, I remember this part when I was young. I remember doing this exact thing. And it's just always an awesome moment to like sort of reminisce or revisit your old memories.
Right. Yeah, no, I totally agree. A lot of that sort of stuff, I guess I try to bring it into everything that I do. And I'm guessing you guys do the same thing. You want other people to share in that memory or that
Yeah.
joy of those nostalgic games or movies that we enjoyed. I mean, I guess every person says this in their generation, but I definitely think that the younger generation has lower quality stuff coming out.
Yeah.
Like the stuff we got to enjoy as kids was
Yeah.
way better storytelling, way better video games. Like I know the graphics maybe don't hold up in some cases, but I don't know. I know I'm biased, but I
No,
think
no,
it
I agree. No, yeah, because for example, I grew up watching like Boomerang or reruns of older shows, and one of my favorite shows is Samurai Jack, and that was a little older. And I've also loved what's it called? Not I believe it's Johnny Quest, the little blonde kid and stuff. And I remember seeing the older shows and liking them more, and the early 2000 shows like Ben 10 and stuff like that. But as it's moving forward, and I'm looking at what my little sister's watching, what my cousin's watching, I get that feeling of, oh, that's not good. That's very bad. What are you watching?
yeah, I mean even like have you guys seen the new Teen Titans cartoon?
Yeah, the Teen Titans Go. Yeah,
Very like Disney in like the most Disney form it could possibly be. Like take out all the fun, gory bits, the fighting. It's just
yeah,
I get what they're doing as well. It's really a shame when you see companies doing that as well because I mean, I do appreciate all the storytelling that I got to experience as a kid, and now these days they're aiming for a demographic, obviously, and they're aiming for the kids, and the parents want it like to be super PC, and it's like, man, like back in the day they would throw in kind of adult jokes in a kids movie, and like I wouldn't understand what it was saying,
No
like, but
clue.
you'd go with your parents and like both of you would enjoy it. Whereas today it's kind of like, man, what are we watching?
Yeah,
It's
no, yeah.
boring.
To be fair, some kids show were scary. Like I remember Courage the Cowardly Dog, and 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 there was a character that was three. The whole show is 2D. The entire show, there was this one character that was 3D, and he's like weird looking. He looks like a deformed fetus, and it scarred my mind as a child. But it's like when you look back at it, it sort of made you grow a little. It's like, oh, these are things that happen. These are things that also are supposed to make adults feel weird, so you start to get a stronger sense of yourself and a stronger sense of what you want to watch and maturity.
Yeah, definitely. I think you got to be exposed to stories and quality media, quality forms of art. It's I think it's important. Otherwise, people kind of think everything's junk. They grow up kind of going, I'm not really into it, but it's because you didn't get to see the good stuff.
Yeah.
There's a lot of cool stuff out there. You know, yeah, I'm a big fan of a lot of the new stuff that's coming out. Especially kind of Guardians of the Galaxy is a huge
Yeah,
one.
yeah. I'm excited for that too.
It's because it's made by someone who is obviously a fan of all the stuff we talked about, and he has a respect for storytelling. I mean, you can always tell, right? Like what the artist's influences are, and kind of see what they respect and don't respect, or care about, and what their focus is. Which, yeah, is kind of why I love those movies so much, because they have the jokes, the dirty jokes. It's still a kid-friendly movie, and there's still stuff being made that's good quality, basically, and I'm happy to see that. But this comic book I'm making is definitely not one of those things.
I love the attitude. It's when you're a creator, because I also want to create my own mythical comic book, but I'm still working on it. I don't want to give too much detail because you never know. But it's always that feeling of I want to make something different. I want to make my mark specifically, and I know what I have to do in order to make that mark, and I will. Is that feeling of I will do it? There's no other choice. I'm making my mark here and now.
Right, it's a little bit of ego. You need to lean into it a slight amount. Just entertain your ego a little bit, but then pull back.
Yeah.
Yourself. This is going to be the greatest, and then calm down. There's a balancing act, for sure. I
Yeah.
think in any art form, there's a little bit of that, because you do see in some of the greatest films, paintings, whatever it is, the artist, in a lot of cases, the artist was a little bit egotistical, but they end up making something so amazing. It could even goes for companies. Look at Steve Jobs, possibly one of the biggest egos ever, uh, but look at the stuff that he made. If you can get a hold of that and kind of guide it, in a sense, guide your ego, and you can manage to make something really great. I think. I'm hoping that that's the case with mine, at least.
Is there a moment while creating the comic or like and seeing the art, is there a moment where you told yourself like this right here, this is amazing, this is the best thing that's ever existed?
Oh, dude, like you know, you guys probably had the same feelings, right? Like I've been in my car on the way home, thinking, yeah, my job sucks. My boss is an asshole. These are all people I don't work for anymore, so it's okay. But just think, fuck these guys, fucking assholes. They don't even know how good I am. They don't even know, man. Thinking, I'm about to make some crazy shit. All those thoughts. You're just telling me all this crap, and it's an effort just to make yourself feel a bit better. But if it works, it works, right? Just got to make sure you don't stay there for too long. yeah, everybody has those days, I think. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. You know, you pump up the music and you just thinking like, "Fuck you." Yeah,
No, I'm pretty sure every college student has a moment where you're studying for finals and you're like, you know what? I don't need this. I could be the best out there at something else that doesn't require college. I don't need to study. What do you mean sit here for 10 hours straight learning about something? Nah, I got better things to do.
yeah, I was definitely one of those students for sure. Yeah. I don't know about you guys. Are you studying right now, or are
Yeah,
you?
I am. Yeah.
Um, I maybe joined a bit later as well, which might have been a problem. But I definitely came in thinking I'm hot shit because I have a bit of life experience, which wasn't the case. um, yeah, it's I think everybody kind of maybe a lot of people struggle with school, and especially when you get to university, it's there's a lot of egos at play, I think, in some cases, especially in art degrees or creative degrees.
Yeah.
You know, it's just one of those things, isn't it? A lot of people in my class had the same feeling of, am I even in the right spot? Am I doing the right things? Like, I know where I want to go and what I want to be, but this doesn't feel like it's getting me there anytime soon. And I had that feeling constantly. And I mean, at the time, I wasn't so young that I could just go to school and not worry about money and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
um it's case by case, obviously, but yeah, for
No,
sure.
I feel that people with like some like somewhat of a artistic purpose, people that just, because the way I see it is there's some people who naturally their purpose is art, whether they like it or not. Some people are just meant to do something because that's what their bodies and brain are designed to do. I don't know why it happens, but some people are designed to do certain stuff. And when you're an artist or someone that thinks very creatively, everything else becomes so boring. You just want to create. Your whole goal in mind is, I need to make something now, I need to make something later, but I need to make something. And so when you're working a 9 to 5, or when you're working a part-time job, or when you're studying, you always have in the back of your head that little voice in your head, go create something. This is not for you. And so I have those moments all the time. I'm a psych major, and sometimes I'm reading and studying. I do a lot of social justice research, and I'm just reading and studying. And sometimes I'm like, you know what? I don't want to study or read anymore. I want to create something with what I've learned from people. I want to use that knowledge of people's like personality and make characters that make you feel like you're them almost. And it's just
I
those moments, yeah.
I totally agree. Everything you said, it rings true in my life. Um, there's been plenty of times where I just wanted to make something, but I didn't know what, and I wasn't in a position where it was obvious
Yeah.
how to make that happen. And there's many people I've met that kind of have the same struggles. I feel blessed to have landed in a career that lets me do things like that every day. Like being a graphic designer, I get to kind of just make stuff all day, even though there's constraints and it's not always fun like a comic book. Um, yeah, I totally agree. I always want to get in there. I just want to make stuff. Also, like, I don't know if you guys can, relate to this, but I get really obsessive. I hyper obsessive about art and design, and I think that's a trait that a lot of people like us share.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, definitely. I sometimes when I'm creating a story, like I told you, I'm working on something mythical. Sometimes I just sit, if I'm taking the train back to college or anything, I sit there and I'm like, all right, I have to write something right now. I don't know what it is, but I have to come up with a story, and I sit there and I'm writing on my phone and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh, and I could add this, and by the time I realize the train is already like at its stop and I gotta get out.
Right, you just lose track of time completely. And it's a similar thing to when you're playing a video game or watching a movie, right? The exact same amount of enjoyment, and it's just all from what you're thinking about, your creativity. I mean, obviously, it can have a negative effect on your relationships. You know, you've got to make sure that you're doing it in a healthy way, which I don't always do, and I think that's common. But yeah, definitely, I have the same thing with this comic book in particular. Being that it's got to this stage, it's become its own thing, to be honest. And if I don't keep going with it, I'm in trouble. Do you know what I mean? Like I have to keep going. So the obsessive qualities kind of lend themselves well to this situation. But yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
Yeah. I always have my phone. Sorry, I always have my phone on silent. So when my brain starts taking over the hyperfixation, I have to remember. Oh wait, check your phone because you probably have so many messages and you're not answering any of them.
Exactly, or commitments or whatever it is. Yeah. I think everyone in this chat can relate to that feeling of I am on this thing. I know I have other stuff to do, but I kind of don't give a shit. I need to finish this thing. It kind of reminds me of this conversation I had a while ago about how in today's age there's less group focus, group attention on a particular show or event, or even a pop singer. There's, back in the day, everybody kind of knew about one singer, one show, and everybody's kind of doing all the same thing because there was only a certain amount of channels. There was only one kind of thing going on. But these days, there's so much, variance in what we're looking at and watching, and it kind of makes these little groups instead of one large collective. You got a bunch of little groups of people, little niches of people doing different things. It's kind of, I don't know how people connect, in this day and age. I feel like it's just a little different than how I grew up, and it's interesting watching the younger generation deal with that, and kind of they're almost like stuck in a little silo of their own thoughts and opinions on what's cool. Right. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for these little groups, and that's kind of where I'm getting my audience from. My audience for this comic is definitely a particular type of person. I'm not exactly like that person. I'm more like you in the way that I floated around. I wasn't like any particular type. It's a little bit nerdy. I like to be social sometimes. It just depends on my mood, really. But it's interesting when you're building up a community around something you're creating. Those communities that are kind of hyper focused on one type of thing, they're really valuable, and I really appreciate their commitment, because when they see what you're making and they're like, that's dope, they're like all in, like crazy all in.
That's me.
Yeah, they're like, this is the shit, bro. Like this. Yeah. Which is great. It's a little scary at times for sure, but it's good. It's a good thing, and that's kind of what I've experienced. It's been a lot of people super passionate, and they seem to love sci-fi horror. I didn't realize how big this genre was. It's huge.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stories in this. I mean, there's obviously a lot of movies and TV shows within that space, but I didn't realize how feverish people get for this type of stuff. As soon as they see it, and they're like, man, another thing, this is awesome. Yeah, if it's good. They don't know anything about the story. It's just because it's kind of, I don't know, it's fucked up, and they do science in a cool way. Science can be so kind of disturbing that it's interesting. But yeah, I'm definitely excited that all this is happening, and you guys have had me on for this chat about the book. But even though I've only written the first comic, I hope that everyone's happy with it. There's gonna be way more, I promise you. But there's a few at the very end. There's gonna be something surprising. So yeah, anyone who joins, uh, it's beyond just the colors. It's, even though, as you guys have said many times over, the colors are like a big deal. It's crazy on the color. The story is also pretty wacky.
Yeah, I can't wait to read it. Like I said, there's moments where I forget about the background or the foreground, and I'm just story mode where I'm checking the story out. So I can't wait to see it, especially since you said the stuff about the villain. I want to know more. I want to get to know them, and I'm excited to see it. I'm excited to read the whole thing.
It's heavy on the mystery for sure.
This was an awesome experience. Like I said, we should definitely talk more about the comic dubbing, because since you seem to really want to get it out there, we could set it up, have a specific deadline, get all the voices that you would want and all the people. And so by probably the time that, well, I have a question real quick. Sorry. Are you planning on releasing all of the issues as soon as like the first one releases, or are you gonna do it like weekly or monthly?
I would love to release the whole complete story all at once. Believe me, if I had the resources, I would have it done right now. I'd be all over that. But because of restrictions and because of, I guess, the quality that we're aiming for makes it very difficult to do too many at once. Rod Looper is very, very busy. It's going to be like every maybe 6 months to start off with, and then hopefully we can close that gap a little bit and pump them out quicker. But you know, it all depends on people really supporting the campaign. If we can get people, the more and more people to jump on board and really support us, you know, it's not that expensive, and I think it's a pretty good quality book. We can do them quicker, you know, the more people that join on and participate.
All right. So if you'd like, we could once the first issue releases, we could keep in contact, have a little team so that we could do the whole comic dubbing, so that before the next one releases, you had that comic book dubbing that you could release whenever you want.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely. I think maybe next time it would be good to get Rod in here as well.
Yeah,
I'm
of
not
course.
sure if you'd be up for that, but yeah, next time maybe you guys could get his perspective, and then, you know, we talk about the dubbing as well. I know he mentioned it in the last thing that we did together, and I think he was pretty keen for that to happen as well, because I don't think many of his projects end up doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he'd be interested for sure.
Yeah, I'm super excited. We could always have that once the series is done. We could have that final podcast talking about it and reviewing. We could have you on and let you know how we felt about each comic page and stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've had fun. This was really good. I mean, I'm tired. I'm tired as fuck.
Yeah.
Having a good time.
All right. So, well, once again, thank you so much for joining us. It was an awesome experience. We'll definitely let everyone else know. For everybody watching, thank you for coming. We are really grateful for this opportunity, and we can't wait to see where your projects go.
Thanks, dude. Thanks, guys.
Of course.
This has been amazing. You know, it's taken a while to get this together, but I'm glad we did it.